Good evening, live from this news center of the Sultanate of Oman Television. Here we present to you tonight's news bulletin. But first, the headlines. The Supreme Committee dealing with coronavirus developments approves a package of facilities to support the private sector and its workforce. And the Minister of Health announces 97 new confirmed COVID-19 cases with 131 recoveries. Good evening once again, and thank you for joining us. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail. His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq sends a cabal of greetings to Her Excellency Queen Margaret II of Denmark on her birthday. A statement issued by the COVID-19 Supreme Committee to deal with the developments resulting from the spread of the pandemic has approved a package of facilities to support the private sector and its workforce, and it has been reached in agreement between the relevant government agencies and the private sector through representatives of the Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In accordance with this package, private sector institutions and companies are obligated to maintain the Omani employees and not to terminate their services. The facilitation package supports the sustainability of business or private sector enterprises and enhances their ability to cope with the exceptional circumstances resulting from the spread of the coronavirus locally and globally. According to the package, those institutions and companies must reform the work system, use modern technology and work remotely to limit the gatherings of the workforce and ensure that adequate spaces are provided between workers in the workplace and housing to ensure their health and safety. The workers of private sector are entitled to full salary and leave during the period of institutional and domestic quarantine, provided that the completion of the quarantine period is proved by a certificate issued by the competent authority. The package defines the obligations of the private sector towards the affected Omani employees and includes the services of the Omani employee must not end. The workers of the affected private sector institutions and companies are entitled to paid annual vacations. During the current circumstances, the affected private sector companies and institutions may negotiate to reduce the wage of their employees for a period of 3 months in exchange for reducing the working hours after the balance of the employees' paid vacations has been fully exhausted, provided that this procedure is applied if necessary from May 2020. The package offers a number of facilities to support the Omani workforce whose wages are reduced, postponing the repayment of bank loans and various financing loans during the period of reducing wages and rescheduling loans free of interest and without any additional fees, postponing the payment of electricity and water and wastewater bills until the end of June 2020 in installments and scheduling the amounts due later, enrolling the beneficiaries of the National Fuel Support Card according to their sources of income. The package approved by the Supreme Committee also includes a number of obligations by the private sector towards the non-Omani workforce, which are the institutions and companies of the private sector and the non-Omani workers shall agree in terms of payment of their wages. The workers of the affected private sector's institutions and companies are entitled to paid annual vacations, urging the affected private sector's institutions and companies to repatriate the non-Omani workforce permanently. The package includes a number of facilities provided by the government to private sector institutions and companies, including facilities provided by the Minister of Manpower, including reducing the fees for renewing non-Omani workforce ID cards starting from its date until the end of June 2020 to become 201 Omani Riyals instead of 301, while permitting the renewal of expired cards for institutions and companies that have an Omani workforce and owners of small and medium enterprises registral with social insurance. Exemption from fees and fines resulting from work permits for non-Omani workforce, provided that they leave the Sultanate finally. Allow employers to renew expired work permits for workers currently outside the Sultanate during the precautionary period and exempt from the penalties resulting therefrom after coordination with the competent authorities, extending the period of licenses for non-Omani workforce expiring during this period. Initial work permits may be approved for a non-Omani workforce that is partial or temporary use, where fees are calculated for the number that the establishment wishes to bring. Multiple establishments owned by the same partners may assign their employees to work in any of these establishments if necessary. The package permits private sector enterprises to use the workforce of other enterprises to work in their facilities according to a written agreement between them. Allow affected private sector institutions and companies to terminate their non-Omani workforce labor contracts, provided that these institutions commit to pay all dues to the employees who leaves the Sultanate permanently. The Minister of Commerce and Industry provides a number of facilities, including the continuation of exemption issued about fees for renewing the commercial registry from its date until the end of June 2020 for all institutions and companies, allowing the operation of service institutions which provide services to large institutions or individuals according to the precautionary controls determined by the competent authorities, adopting precautionary measures in factories so that they are allowed to continue their work. The package also includes exemptions obtained by the private sector institutions and companies from licensing, renewal fees and fines for a period of 3 months for the Minister of Regional Municipalities and Water Resources, the Minister of Tourism, and the Public Authority for Consumer Protection. Regarding government projects, the package includes the commitment of government sectors and government companies to continue the contracts concluded with institutions and companies in the private sector in the field of services. Flexibility in extending the period of completion of government projects for the institutions and companies affected by the closure, while exempting them from the fines and fees resulting therefrom. The package approved by the Supreme Committee includes a number of facilities provided by the Omani Public Authority for Social Insurance, and it includes allow those business owners insured Omanis registered in the social security system abroad and their equivalents, and the insured or insured registered in the social security system who are self-employed and their equivalents, to postpone the payment of the monthly contributions that are due for the months of March, April and May until the end of June 2020, provided that these contributions are paid in one installment before the end of the aforementioned date or in installments as will be detailed later. Exemption from the fines that will result from the delay in paying the contributions due for the months of March, April and May 2020, or resulted from the delay in registering their Omani workforce or notification of the end of their services during the same period, knowing that these exemptions does not extend to the fines calculated for any month preceding those months indicated above. Implementing the following procedures and controls for installments mentions temporarily for the period from March to the end of August 2020, which is without calculating interest on installments determined at a rate of 3% when business owners request installments of contributions due for the period referred to above. The installments shall be monthly, which do not exceed 24 installments, provided that these installments are paid continuously from the date of the start of the installment, and the employer may submit a request for rescheduling the installment, provided that this is one-time payment in each case of installment and not exceeding 18 installments, and the original installment period shall be ended upon rescheduling. Therefore, it is allowed for a rescheduling request after the deadline of the agreed installments. With regard to the energy and water sector, the facilitation package approved by the Supreme Committee includes the postponement of the payment of entitlements of electricity and water for a period of 3 months to the affected institutions and companies, provided that the affected small and medium enterprises are given the time to postpone the payment of those dues and are subsequently in installments, in addition to the payment of the National Fuel Support Card to categories from the Omani workforce in the private sector whose wages are temporarily reduced until the end of the impact period of the closure. On the 18th of March 2020, the Central Bank of Oman announced other facilities for private sector institutions and companies, including emphasis on facilitating lending in sectors affected by the current situation, including the healthcare, special education, travel and tourism sectors, including facilitating the granting of emergency loans, directing banks, finance and leasing companies to respond to requests to postpone the payment of installments and interest for affected borrowers for a period of 3 months, especially for small and medium enterprises and any party affected by the current situation, and grant flexibility in dealing with loans related to financing government projects and not to introduce any new fees. The Ministry of Health announced 97 new confirmed cases with coronavirus COVID-19, which brings the total number registered in the Sultanate to 910, including 131 recoveries and 4 deaths. The Ministry of Health calls upon all to adhere to the isolation procedures by staying in an isolated room with an attached toilet and serving the isolated person from the outside the room as instructed. The ministry also advises all citizens and residents to keep on washing hands with water and soap, as well as avoiding touching the face, nose, mouth and eyes, and follow the hygienic habits when coughing and sneezing. The ministry also urges everyone to adhere strictly to social distancing instructions issued by the COVID-19 Supreme Committee and the Ministry of Health, as well as staying at home and not to go out unless absolutely necessary. The Minister of Health, represented by the Central Bank Blood Bank, the Royal Hospital, performed successfully a procedure of convalescent plasma extraction and transfusion from people who have recovered from COVID-19. More details in the following report. The Minister of Health, represented by the Central Bank and the Royal Hospital, performed successfully a procedure of convalescent plasma extraction and transfusion from people who have recovered from COVID-19. Many recovered patients donated their blood plasma according to the global blood bank standards and controls. Recovered donors were scrutinized in the Minister of Health's Central Blood Bank laboratories to take their plasma in order to be injected into the critically ill patients admitted in the Royal Hospital. The clinical vital signs of patients are closely monitored to measure the effectiveness of this therapy. His Excellency, the Minister of Health, remarked on the plasma transfusion procedure performed yesterday, being the first in the Sultanate, where its indications were promising in other countries. He assured that the Sultanate at the moment has sufficient stock of drugs used in all countries for this disease. Deployment of modern techniques in dealing with this pandemic are further run to track the affected cases, as well as institutional and home quarantined cases, and they are to be announced next week. The COVID-19 pandemic constitutes an unprecedented challenge with socio-economic consequences. Oman, like other countries, is committed to do everything necessary to meet this challenge. More details in the following report. A global economy could shrink by almost 1% as per Business View. This is due to the rapid spread of the novel coronavirus COVID-19, which has been declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization. In 2020, the situation of which is adversely affecting economies and businesses around the world, governments have announced relief measures to mitigate its economic impact and help individuals and businesses navigate these unprecedented times. The COVID-19 pandemic and precautionary measures taken by the Sultanate of Oman have affected the normal operations of the business sector and given rise to various challenges. With a view of mitigating the effects of these precautionary measures, the government has introduced a number of relief initiatives to relax and regulatory compliance for businesses. These measures would also likely help in the management of financial and operational burdens. Now, to learn more on the implications of the spread of coronavirus on the economic situation, with us here is engineer Mohammed bin Salim Al Busaidi, former member of the Shura Council. Engineer Mohammed bin Salim, welcome to our studio here. And at the beginning, we would like actually to ask you, what would you like to tell us about the current economy situation here in the south?
Thank you, Abdullah. I think all of us, we have noticed that anyway, the government has taken many measures since the breakthrough of this virus. And the formation of the Supreme Committee by His Majesty, I think, which was the priority to deal with this situation. And Oman, like any other country as well, will be affected economically with this epidemic, and government as well. They have to deal with this side of the economic side of the situation of the epidemic, and as well as we have seen, certain measures has been taken earlier by the government and the committee, which was a few weeks ago, and today as well, as we have listened, many other measures has been taken to support the private sector mainly and the workers in the private sector.
What are your readings for the future on the national economy?
Well, Abdullah, I think this situation now, we are not dealing with a normal economic or financial crisis as it happened before, or even with epidemic, which is, has limited, spread in some countries. We are dealing with a pandemic that is, very very fast spreading throughout the countries, and as well with unknown actual limit or time duration of the pandemic itself. I think the matter all, it comes to the when can this pandemic can be contained by a formation of a vaccine, which is as well, till now, according to the expert in the health field, they don't know how long the vaccine could take. Normally, in some situations, it might take up 14 months to get a vaccine for such a pandemic. I think that is only where we can see the 100% control of the pandemic itself first, then we can deal with the economic matter. But anyway, I think now all the efforts is to focus is stopping the spreading of the pandemic itself, controlling it, and try to minimize as well the spreading throughout the country. Unfortunately, Oman, like many other countries who are depending on oil in their general income, is affected more and badly. The government was trying to deal with the fluctuation of the oil prices in the past 5 years, and at a sudden the pandemic is here, and also as well in the last month we have noticed a very big fall in the oil prices. So it has to deal with a very difficult situation. I think it will be a very difficult year for not only for Oman, for many other countries, but we have to cooperate as individuals and as well institutions with the government to overcome this situation.
Indeed, this is the reality, and each and everyone has got really to be prepared. We thank the government of His Majesty Sultan Haytham that has issued this, again, the decision through the Supreme Committee, which will help very much people and institutions at the same time. Now, how should the current situation be dealt with to minimize the economic effects of the crisis by individuals and institutions?
As I mentioned earlier, the situation is very difficult. It is going to affect everybody, actually, individuals or institutions or even the economic of the country. And I think now the only thing we have to work jointly with, join our hands with the government at this situation. And we have to deal with the situation in two different aspects. First of all, is to adhere with the decisions taken by the Supreme Committee in taking like social distancing, distance, and also taking preventive measures to overcome the spread of the pandemic itself, and try to control it to the minimum period, and that is number one, and that is actually responsibility of all of us, individuals and also institutions. The second aspect, which is actually the most difficult, is the economic effects of the pandemic itself, which is really, could be very difficult, but as well, we as individuals and also institutions as well, we have to work and to understand how to deal with the situation. Actually, we don't have to deal it emotionally, and we have to be very realistic and understanding the consequence of this pandemic. It will affect for sure everybody, but I think as well with a huge cooperation from individuals, from as well institutions, everybody has to take his part actually in working closely with the government, and with today's measure as well. I think that will help, but maybe not enough, but for sure it will help to minimize the as well the economic effect of this pandemic.
Engineer Mohammed, thank you very much for being with us, and thank you for your input. Indeed, public need to be aware. They need to take all the precaution. A good example of what is being said actually here, and a good example we have here, social distancing or physical distancing in reality, that is very important in actually preventing the spread of coronavirus. Wash hands and keep yourself clean, not to be in a crowded area is very, very important. Once again, we thank you very much, Engineer Mohammed, who is the former member of the Majlis Shura. Thank you. On the completion of, and here now, the Minister of Financial Affairs issued circular number 13 of 2020 to rationalize the development expenditures of ministries and civil units. The circular stated that in implementation of His Majesty's Royal Directives, the necessary financial measures are taken to counter the effects resulting from the decline in oil prices, which will lead to financial savings in spending and reduce the deficit of the state budget, including reducing the approved liquidity of the development budgets of ministries and civil government units for the year 2020 by 10%. The ministry noted that all ministries and civil government units were notified, and the mentioned percentage of the approved liquidity in the budget of each entity was deducted. It called all parties to fully adhere the reversed liquidity, taking into consideration giving priority to disbursing the payments due to contractors and suppliers, taking into account the rescheduling of expenses during the remaining months of the year 2020 in accordance with the revised liquidity and prior coordination with it to obtain the approval before signing any businesses or entering into any financial obligations on the approved development budget. The Minister of Finance confirmed that the provision of any additional financial allocation will not be considered during the year, which requires full commitment to what was stated in this publication in order to achieve the public interest due to the continuing effects of unfavorable financial and economic conditions. The International Monetary Fund expected the Sultan's GDP to grow at a rate of 3% next year compared to the decline of this year by -2.8% due to the pandemic of COVID-19. The fund also expected that growth in oil importing countries will decline by 8% this year to rise to 2.8% next year. The fund said it was likely that the losses that fueled the global financial crisis would multiply against the output losses associated with this health emergency and the associated containment measures. His Excellency Sayyid Khalid bin Hilal Al Busaidi, Minister of the Diwan of the Royal Court and Chairman of the Civil Service Council, issued a decision announcing that the official working hours at the ministries, public authorities and other departments of the state's administrative apparatus during the holy month of Ramadan will be from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the year 2020. Meanwhile, His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah bin Nasser Al Bakri, Minister of Manpower, issued a decision declaring that the official working hours at the private sector companies and establishments for Muslim employees during the holy month of Ramadan will be reduced to 6 hours per day and 30 hours per week, and the concerned bodies must implement this decision. On this occasion, all employees in the private and public sectors forward their best greetings to His Majesty the Sultan, praying to Allah the Almighty to protect him and endow him with good health, happiness and long life, and to return similar occasions on him and to the Omani people and all Muslims with omen and blessings. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. The Supreme Committee dealing with coronavirus developments approves a package of facilities to support private sectors and its workforce. And the Minister of Health announces 97 new confirmed COVID-19 cases with 131 recoveries. And with that, we do conclude this news bulletin brought to you live from this news center of the Sultanate of Oman television. Thank you for joining us, and do follow the precautionary measures. Stay healthy and safe at home with your family.